Today is March 22nd, 2020. Saturn is in Aquarius and the sun is in Aries. It is also the spring equinox, the balance of the light and the dark, the integration of divine feminine and divine masculine. I feel like, I speak for myself, I feel like from everything that I've been gathering up and speaking, it's like I put the pieces together to the cycle of change and everything that I have experienced for the past several years, everything that I have I've had to surrender to. And so I go back to thinking of December 21st, you know, that's when the winter solstice took place. And that winter solstice had to do with the Christ consciousness that was flowing and coming through, that was connected to the divine feminine and the divine masculine, but even more so the divine masculine, because it was like a portal that opened up that represented rebirth. It represents rebirth. And so whenever we're going through a birthing cycle, we have to go in the dark. We have to go into the deepest, darkest parts of ourselves that we may not want to look at. And through that hole and in that dark is where we find ourselves. And then we rebirth this new energy on earth that's linked to the 369 Tesla. And so everything is happening. As I close my eyes, I see everything happening in the etheric realm. That's how close it is. It's like a taste away, and how much more things are manifesting in the physical realm that is pushing through from the etheric elements. The etheric elements. You can't see it, but you definitely can feel it. You know, it's like an extension of yourself. It's an extension of your thoughts. It's an extension of your feelings that make up who you are. It's that part of your consciousness that you may not see, because, you know, when you die, you really don't die. You just transform. So it's like we're transforming ourselves through this consciousness that's connected to the etheric realm. And so I go back to when December 21st took place, and it's like it represents a split. You split two realities, and through that split it breaks off a part of itself that is no longer necessary. So it's like when the caterpillar is turning to the butterfly, it has to release something off of it so it can come into its fullest, purest form, and then it may start again in another cycle. So I feel that December 21st was the beginning of a cycle of parts of the divine masculine, because I really feel like the rebirth of the divine masculine is moving in segments. It's moving in segments, it's moving in intervals, and it's moving in stages. And so everything that has remained or had remained as a block, the Christ consciousness has been moving through, permeating through the cells of that system that was in place, breaking down that patriarchy and releasing baggage, and also opening the third eye chakra, opening parts of self that have not been explored. And it had to go in stages. It's almost like all the blocks that are there, like you're looking at you know, like they show me like Jenga, and then all of a sudden something just comes like a wind and a force that just knocks it all off, knocks it, you know, it just falls away. And there's some pieces that you just can't pick up, and there's some pieces that you will pick up, pieces you may recognize and pieces you may not be able to find. Because if you remember with Aset and Asar, he was chopped up into so many pieces, and she, through her pain and her grieving, she found all the pieces of him except for one piece, and that was the phallus. And she was determined to put him back together again, and she used all her power to recreate a new divine masculine, who became Horus, who's able to see through the eyes and the lens of the divine feminine, the divine masculine, of the inner child, and all of earth and cosmic energy. And so she held that baby in her arms, and she initially had created the divine masculine, and now she's recreating a new prototype. I kept hearing that. I was taking my bath and I heard this is the new prototype of divine masculine. It's a new prototype. It's a regeneration like the mummy, but it's in stages. It's not every single person who's embodying masculine energy is at that level, because it's all in intervals and stages. But as one divine masculine that pushes through, and the divine feminine that holds that space, because before it was like the divine masculine holds that space. So, it's like the female, it gives birth to the child, and then the it's usually the father that's holding the hands and holding that space for her to give birth. So now it's switched places. It's like now the divine feminine is holding that space for the divine masculine. It's their time now. It's their time to emerge out of the cocoon. And so the split has happened again. The split has happened again now on the opposite side of the spectrum. So for some who are in the, when we, last year, it's like I was in the northern hemisphere of that split in the aspect of the darkness, when the nighttime came in earlier, and you got to go into that cocoon, and you got to go into a lot of introspection and changes. We have to adapt to the clock going backwards and regressing, going into a further review, deeper review, however it takes you. And then something's released through that time. And so then that cycle between 12/21 and then moving into the eclipse that came in January, and moving through all that density, Capricorn. Everything was in Capricorn. Saturn was conjunct Pluto, and then the sun was in Capricorn from December 21st, and the elements of all those structures and everything was already starting to crumble. And then so that space was opened up again for something to change and to transform. So it was just the beginning stages. It's like when you have like a when you're going to see a movie and they have previews of life's coming attractions. And so when I think and I remember, January 5th was also significant. I don't remember the exact planetary aspect that was taking place, but I remember January 5th was significant, and also January 12th, I remember. And it was so deep for me. I was in that heavy density for myself, try to release that cycle of energy that I felt that was holding on to me, and it felt like that energy that was holding on to me brings me back to the ancient times. I'm feeling Greece, I'm feeling Italy, I'm feeling Egypt, ancient Kemet. I'm feeling the region and the areas that was so deep and heavy in enslavement for both masculine and feminine. I think about all the energies of the Ice Age, the Dark Age, all those ages, even when I think of the word age, age. And that's why I choose not to use the word when someone says, how old are you? What is your age? It feels, the word age feels heavy. Age feels deep. Age feels dark. You have the Iron Age, the Stone Age. Think about all the males that had to go out to war and to battle, and they had to put these breastplates on, and it was heavy again, and they had to put these things to cover their face, the mask and the plates over their heads. and their faces, and it was heavy again. They don't even know what it's like to feel light at all. It's because it's just centuries of darkness and dismay and confusion, no freedom. They have felt they don't even know what it's like to be free like this, because it's so deep, because it goes so deep. When I tap into the ice age, from what I can feel into that vibration, I don't know what number sequence the ice age was. So it's like I feel into when there was no sunlight and it feels cold and dismayed, and there's like you're not getting as much vitamin D, you're not getting as much source energy and information to flow through the sun into the cellular parts of the body and the skin. And so, anything that humans had in terms of connecting to one another, it was just in a dark period. And I know the ice age lasted for a very, very long time. And then I think about the dark ages. The dark ages was another primitive time, and it feels very depressing as well. I think when I even think about the ice age, it reminds me of if you were living in a place like, I think about Mount Pocono, Pennsylvania, where it snows every day and there's hardly any sunshine, and it has the highest rate of depression and sadness and highest suicide, one of the highest suicide rates in the country, because there's no sun, there's no light. See, whenever anything is out of balance, like if you have one side of the spectrum where there's darkness or it's too cold, and if you don't have as much sunlight and there's not as much sun and the rays shining on you, you're not as happy. When I think about, the fall, as soon as when the fall is coming in, I start to feel sad, because I know that the clock is going to change again, and it's going to be going backwards, and then it's time to put on those heavy coats again, and there's hardly any daylight, and you got to stay indoors and go back indoors again, and be hidden from the sun. And then it's like everything else is just based on being disconnected from the light. And I go into the dark ages. The dark ages was like a period of such ignorance, so it's like Spirit is having me discuss all the different types of darkness. So you have the dark age and the dark periods of ignorance, lack of understanding, lack of wisdom. There's no connecting to source through light. Light also represents knowledge and wisdom, and there's no feelings whatsoever. It's kind of robotic. Everybody's controlled, and they're just, moving from day to day as if, it's just non-existent. It reminds me of those males in London where they're taught to just stand there. They're taught to stand there and not have any feelings and show no emotions whatsoever. They're taught not to smile. And so it just gives off an energy of being like a statue and having no feelings. And that was also flowing through from masculine energy in terms of ignorance, when I think of the dark ages again. And so periods of these ages, again, when I think of the word age, it makes me feel old and haggard. It makes me think about sagging, makes me think about having no feelings and also feeling disconnected. I know that sometimes people feel oh, you should embrace getting older, you know, enjoy the aging process. But who says that that's the natural way to be? I know that we all desire to experience different sides of a spectrum. But when I think about the word, again, age, it feels like something is slowed down. Everything's slowed down. The brain, if you're not using the brain, you develop a disease of the mind, and how people develop Alzheimer's and memory loss, and sometimes it manifests into tumors. If anything starts to stem from anger and energy that's not released from the brain, and not tapping into divine intelligence. And again, it stems from being so robotic, just being very robotic and not connecting. And so it's so interesting how society normalizes aging. Like, oh, just go along with the aging process. You're supposed to get old. Allow everything to show up the way it does as being old. And how old are you? I'm this year's old, old, and don't realize that the words carry a vibration. The energy of old itself carries a vibration. And aging, So when I think of the word light-hearted, feeling lighter in the heart, that, again, we go back to Osset, when she assisted others to get to the other side, and this is where a lot of us are moving into. We're jumping the broom, like jumping to the other side. Are you going to stay in the dark ages and the iron age and the stone age? Or are you going to move to the other side into the golden light and the golden age, where you feel lighter, you look lighter, you're in joy, and everything else around you doesn't matter with all that heaviness and pain? And that means that we're conscious of the words we speak and what had been created by humanity that is so programmed into so many of these realities that become so normalized, that how can anything be in reverse if it just stays into that realm only? So I think now, and I feel into the newness of this energy and being in another rebirth of this cycle. So it's like rebirthing all these newer realities. And the divine feminine is holding that space for the divine masculine to be transformed, to become lighthearted, to connect. Aries represents masculine. Aries represents beginnings, the self. And so when I wrap it all up into one lump, this is like a new beginning, a new evolvement of masculine energy, a new template, a new prototype of the sacred masculine that is able to honor his wounds. He doesn't have to lick the wounds, because when I think of when somebody says, lick your wounds and just pretend it didn't happen and move on, get over it. There's no getting over it, it's getting through it, honoring it. And even if you've got one little cut or you got a stab wound, even if it's a physical wound, you're able to master yourself through that pain, you see? And that you can get to choose to become lighthearted again and reverse the cycle of aging and all these ages and turn that lead into gold. So this is the time. This is the time. This is the moment, because now Saturn in Aquarius. Saturn. The the same darkness, the same element of that planet that instigates and created the structures and wants you to take responsibility, and how you take action, is now in a space of moving in another direction. It's like moving on a horse. The horse is gallant and strong and proud and in its freedom. And so when I think of Saturn and Aquarius, it's like we're taking responsibility for ourselves now, and we're moving with this responsibility in a new way that feels like freedom. See? And rebuilding this new energy, because we got to rebuild the new energy first, and then everything is now starting to manifest in the physical world, because Aries represents physical as well. And it's also a fire sign, so it gets things going. And so I think about the fact that, the shadow of Mercury is also ending on March 30th. And it's almost like, again, you're releasing another part of ourselves that has been holding on to so deeply and so far from the past. Because there has been so much of that attachment to these memories that are held in the collective consciousness when it comes to masculine energy and what it should be and how we should be, together as one body, of family, and one body of what it is being as a mother, and one body of consciousness of what it represents for children, and one body of consciousness when it comes to the animals on the earth, one body of consciousness for everything in creation, because it all holds a space of consciousness. And so everything that is being rebirthed is happening simultaneously, all at the same time, and moving at a rapid rate. It's like I literally can feel everything moving through the cells of my body. I can feel so much of the mental thoughts that are going on right now. How much more of this introspection is finally happening. Finally being at a place where everyone has to start to feel. Everyone has to start to relate. Everyone has to start to connect, no matter what background you're in, no matter what country you're in, no matter what race you are, no matter what gender. Everything has had to stand still. Everything has had to be still and know God and know thyself. So now we're entering in this pinnacle point of the equinox, the split. It's split and it's integrating at the same time while it's splitting, because the layers of masculine energy are peeling away, which it goes in stages, like someone who's has multiple personalities, and the multiple personalities are created because of when we create blocks from not wanting to look at pain, or we don't want to look at the things that have been undesirable for us, and the self-criticism, the judgment. And so when we can't handle looking at ourselves, looking at the mirrors, we create another alternative, another identity. And then we have all these identities all over the place, and they're in layers. And they come in different forms, because they connect to either a masculine energy or a feminine energy, a male body or a female body. It doesn't really just say, hey, I just want to have it like that. It just happens. It happens because of something that has not been resolved, or something that's ignored, or something that there's fear. And so the fear just blocks the part of the self that is weakened And then it creates another alter ego that would take on the aspect of having more strength. But no matter what happens, we can't suppress anything anymore. Can't medicate it. Can't run away from it. Can't sweep it under the rug. All these different identities and personalities that have been existing on earth. Everything that has been looked at that is divided, from wealth, poverty, color of skin, gender, sexual preferences, disease, famine, health, illnesses. Everything has to be looked at. Everything has to be identified now. And whatever has been held in the Hall of Records, as one would say, all the cards are on the table, with all of the governmental structures that have been formed and all the power that has been given away from humanity, all the power that has been given away in terms of the feminine principle, and what has been buried and hidden and in the dark is now coming forth. It's now rising above the surface now. It's not even at surface level anymore. It's rooted now. It's rooted. It's sprouted up through the physical depths of the earth. See? And so it's this point now of the equinox of what is merging with the pairs, merging love that was once embodied with hate. So those who have hated are now having to move back over to the spectrum of love. Those who have ignored is now having to pay attention. Those who have been more unconscious are now having to become conscious. Those who are not thinking are now having to think. Those who have not felt and have been dead inside have now have to come back alive. Those who have felt abandoned can now find themselves and feel whole again, feel love again. Those who have been divided and separated from others will now have to come back and unite. No one shall be an island ever again, but still at the same time, they're able to identify where they are in their own sanctuary and not compromising themselves. So the true light that returns, the light age, Aset, she represented the pinnacle of mother, goddess, love. She gave of herself. She gave for humanity. She felt like she was responsible for all living things on the earth. She taught what it meant to cohabitate with one another and cultivate and, begin a new way of communication with one another. The languages that were spoken and the syllables and the tongues and the tones and everything was just expanding, in how we wanted to know ourselves in the physical world. And so the time that came for that cycle of leaving, had to come to understand ourselves and ask yourself, what have you learned from your experience on earth? And are you able to let go of whatever you've experienced and then restart again? Is your heart heavy with everything, or is it light? Are you holding on to something in your heart, or are you letting go? What are you filled with, And so this rebirth of energy is now flowing through the divine feminine, recreating the sacred masculine. It's like beginning from scratch. It's as if nothing happened. It's like as if nothing happened before. the destructive energy, the cycles of calamity and chaos. I saw another earthquake took place in Croatia today, and again, it's these pockets of energy that are being rebuilt. Whatever that is in a space of density and darkness which could represent the ignorance, it could represent the manners of evil that mankind has placed upon itself as well. If it's an element of what's out of balance, if it's too heavy, if it's not of the highest state of love for one another, it's not going to last. The Christ consciousness is now here in another layer during this equinox, and I can feel how the males on earth are having to go deeper into thoughts, forgiveness, letting go of control, taking a new way of action, applying wisdom, listening to their intuition, being conscious, being in awareness, having empathy for one another, seeing all sides of the coin. The head is not better than the tail is not better than the head, but it takes both sides to work, to become equals. One is not less than or more than or better than the other. It's like, I think of another analogy to this. When we think of point of reference, when we think of how we weigh and measure, and I always say that if it feels right, you know you're on the right track as far as the highest and best for you. If it feels uncomfortable, if it doesn't feel right, if it feels heavy, then you know that that's not the right path to take. If it felt right in the beginning and it doesn't feel right anymore, you get to choose. You don't have to stay stuck and heavy in your heart and take all those burdens and pain and resentment and anger with you. If you don't release it while you're in the body, you're still going to take it with you when you leave out of your body. So that's why we must face ourselves and why this C virus was created by us. There's no one to blame. It's just a matter of the all there is. What we're creating for change. I can't make heads out of this, so I'm going to make tails. I'm going to begin, I'm going to end, and I'm going to begin, and I'm going to end it again, and I'm going to begin it again. And that's what this is all about. And so now we're moving to another layer of this Christ consciousness, this pure love. This pure love. It's like a place of energy that's within your heart, and you feel it in your solar plexus. It makes you want to dance. It makes you want to laugh. It makes you want to rejoice. And when you connect back to that place, you no longer feel the heaviness in your heart or your soul. You adapt. you change, you move. You're moving to higher places. That's the pearly gates. It's a place of euphoria. It is indescribable. It's one of the grandest feelings in the world to feel this type of peace that has no explanation tied to it to explain to someone else. Because you have to get there on your own to understand it. There are no words to describe this feeling. It's like you're floating in the physical body. You're merged with spirit. And you remember yourself. You remember yourself. That is heaven on earth. This is heaven on earth. This is euphoria.